is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 207th meeting. We've been meeting since February of 2009. This actually, for the benefit of those that haven't been here before, this actually started in Chicago in 1951 for the purpose of solving all the world's problems. They're still working at it. We put a different speaker on every week, a different subject. We require speakers take a position on an issue, express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. They don't care what it is. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter that we only listen to one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. When our speaker is through, we give them up to an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. Then we have questions and answers, not speeches. And then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience here gets to respond to what the speaker said, who wants to. And then our speaker gets a comment and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speaker, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements?
I have an announcement, Tom.
Come on up here.
We'll be doing our usual Christmas Day open
come on up
house.
here.
We'll be doing our usual Christmas Day open house from 2 until 8. I have invitations, but I didn't anticipate such a fabulous group. So I'm going to start these around. If you need to keep the invitation, great. Otherwise, just don't leave them on the table. But I will start sending them. I'll try to pick them up. But, you know, we welcome everybody, but I don't want it just left on the table. So every one of you is invited, and I will start the invitations around.
Tom's chewing, so I'll do my usual brief comment tonight. As Tom said, we're glad to see all of you here tonight. It's a great group. You braved the cold, the dreary, the wet evening to come out, and so we appreciate your effort in coming tonight. We're looking forward to Jim's presentations. They're always interesting, and he does a good job of getting out his information and presenting it in an understandable manner, so I know you'll all enjoy it tonight. And I'll give you my brief financial reminder that we appreciate Barbeck's hospitality. Please be generous with your server, whether you just get a little dab or a big fat meal. Take good care of them. They're serving all of us simultaneously and doing our best to get it, doing their best to get it out of the kitchen to us on a timely way. So be understanding of that. We're not going in a big banquet room with 6 servers, you know. So I don't have any other announcements to make tonight other than just that little brief reminder, and I'm so glad to see you all out here tonight. So Tom, have you swallowed that bite yet? I'm just rambling.
Oh, Susie, you're next.
Hi everybody, thanks for letting me speak. I know that there are a lot of people in this room who are pretty fired up about an announcement that happened down in San Antonio today, and I know I am one of those people. So, if you are with me and you are excited that women are stepping up in political leadership in this state, I have some crazy good news for you guys. We are working really hard to make sure that every person who is eligible to vote has that opportunity. We don't want anybody who's not eligible to vote voting, correct? I think we can all agree on that point. So let's table that crazy discussion. But everybody who is eligible to vote should have the opportunity to vote. And that means checking, especially married ladies or people who've moved because of the economic hardships that we've all been through in the past several years. If you've moved, let's all make sure, make a commitment to me that you'll all make sure that your driver's license or whatever photo ID that you have exactly matches your voter registration so that you won't be questioned when it comes to voting. Because you might not always have as friendly an election judge as I myself checking your card and noticing that, well, because it has your married name on it and your maiden name as opposed to your married name and your middle name, substantially similar is apparently in the eye of the beholder, as we've seen recently. Okay, so let's all get that up to date. Let's encourage your friends, neighbors, and etc. to do that as well. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Let's assume there is a difference. How do you get it correct?
Okay, if you have a difference, what you want, if your photo identification is correct, then you want your voter registration card updated to match the difference. How many people in this room are deputy voter registrars? Any one of us can help you with a green card and we can get that straightened out for you if you've moved. It especially applies if you've moved, right? If you know somebody who's too poor to afford a driver's license because they have no car, they're a student, etc., there are other alternate means of getting an approved voter identification card from the Texas Department of Transportation.
A really quick way to update it, if you have a problem with your voter registration card being a different name than your driver's license, if you will find on the back of your voter registration card the name that's on your driver's license, they can get it back to you in a couple of weeks if it's
Right, but you never want to do that when it's really close to the election. And as far as I know, the next election is probably going to be in March unless we have primary shenanigans again. So thanks, guys. Stay tuned because there's going to be more coming up.
Well, go ahead.
So, hi, some of you may remember me. I've been gone, I left the state and lived out in the desert in Washington State. It was bad, but anyway, I'm back. You can't hear me now? Anyway, next Tuesday night, I'm going to be at Activists for Truth. Is that it, Albert? Speaking about fluoride. So we're going to actually get together, go to City Hall, and work on getting fluoride out of the water. So it would be, please come and learn about, what you can do and how you can help and learn about, how good it'll be without fluoride. Thanks. Oh, it's Tuesday at La Madeleine I think it starts at 7. La Madeleine, Mockingbird and Central, thank you. It starts at 7. I think I start speaking at 8.
Any other announcements? Now's your chance. Chance is gone. All right. Next week, we have November 30th, there's no meeting due to Thanksgiving holiday. December 7th, we have Lessons on the Fall of the Republic with Lloyd Chappelle. He's a historian and economist. He's discussed the fall of the Roman Empire. I'm not going to read all this. You've got it in front of you, and that should suffice. On December 14th, I have the thing here, but it's not printed yet. What happened to the Khazars, Mike Helson, poet, scholar, and avid researcher, will discuss how the Jewish kingdom in Central Asia flourished for more than 200 years and then vanished suddenly from history. He will cover Arthur Kessler, who thought he had solved the mystery, what became his solution, etc. So he's going to talk about that. That'll be on December 14th. So just let you know what it is. Everything's covered for the year, and then we're into next year for speakers. Whoever wants to be a speaker next year, let me know, and we'll put you on. So anyway, our speaker tonight is Jim Love. He's sitting here. He's retired, having worked on as an engineer and educator with publications in both fields and holding a BS in physics from the University of Texas. He's going to comprehensively characterize the Tea Party in 3 categories suggested by the title. The Good will examine the origin of the Tea Party worldview, which is founded early in the 19th century Jacksonianism, The bad and ugly will show that present-day excess is either compromised or contradicted that worldview. And finally, beyond will touch on the side of the role of money, which permeates and contaminates every aspect of American politics. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Jim Love.
I got the floor. Yeah, I got a warm welcome on a cold night. Thank you for coming out. And I know it's cold, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to tell you what the genesis of this is. My sister is, let's say she's hard right in her political views. And we love one another, but we have these ongoing political discussions. And the big deal is that she said, well, would you ever vote for a Republican? And the answer is, yeah, I would, but I'm not going to vote for a Republican these days because it's controlled by an extremist group which is known as the Tea Party, for want of a better name. So, and basically what this talk, that's the genesis of the talk, is that things have gone too far, and the Republicans stand guilty of extremism. Now, if that word rings a bell with you, it should, because if you recall, back in the early 60s, there was a certain guy by the name of Barry Goldwater, right, who was running, right? And he had this campaign slogan about, which was muddled, but extremism was in there, right? And the Republicans had a problem with extremism then, and they got a problem now. Okay, and I'm going to examine that. But just to show you that I'm not lying about this, and that I do stand in good company, I'm going to quote two of the most eminent conservatives that are out there. And these are people that out Reagan. Right? We're talking about Bill Buckley, and we're talking about Barry Goldwater. Now, you can't get better credentials than that, okay? Now, in a 1962 essay in the National Review, which, by the way, is the Bible as far as the conservative thought is concerned, has been, okay, for many, many years, Buckley took on the John Birch Society, all right? And he published an essay in the National Review, and he dismissed Robert Welch's, who was the president of the John Birch Society. He dismissed his views as, quote, drivel, and, quote, removed from common sense. I want to let you know what Buckley's formula for voting was, and I'm quoting now. Republicans should back the most conservative guy, and here's the key phrase, who can win. All right? Now, let me go further. Goldwater and the John Birch Society. Now, Goldwater is at a press conference in 1965. He again, this is not the first time, but he again calls for Republicans to resign from the John Birch Society, acknowledging that the 1964 Republican Convention should have adopted a resolution denouncing political extremism. Now, I would like you to compare that with Romney, who was running saying, oh no, I'm not going to do anything, okay, to repeal Roe v. Wade, while at the same time, at the convention, a platform was being put together, and guess what was on the platform? Something that completely contradicted it, okay? So I stand in good company. I stand with conservatives. I stand, okay, with conservatives who stand in the pantheon of Republican thought as knowing what they're talking about. And they attacked extremism then, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attack extremism now, okay? So that's the preamble to what I'm going to tell you about. Now, the title of this thing is Tea Party, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And you'll be shocked at the beginning, because in the beginning, in the interests of fair play, I'm going to tell you what I don't like about the Obama administration. All right? Because I don't want to be accused of being overly partisan and unbalanced. I don't think I am. But anyways, I'm with the majority of the American people as reported in recent polls. I'm an independent who is somewhat unhappy with the Democrats, furious with the Tea Party-dominated GOP, and utterly disgusted with Washington. And I have a hunch that not too many people would disagree with that. However, in the interest of fairness and full disclosure prior to laying into the Tea Party, I'm going to list my heartburn issues with the Democrats, and please note that even though I voted twice for Obama, this is my full disclosure moment, I'm less than pleased with his performance. So here are the issues. Number one, the Affordable Care Act is a committee-designed monstrosity, which is about what you could expect once the lobbyists got hold of it. Add to that Republican efforts to obstruct and sabotage it, and it's no surprise that it's far from a perfect piece of legislation. Number two, the rollout of the website for the Affordable Care Act did not build confidence in it. Such glaring incompetence concerning Obama's signature achievement is inexcusable. Somebody should be fired. Third, this is my big heartburn issue. A badly deteriorating infrastructure is still falling apart, and a latter-day WPA program to rebuild it never saw the light of day, even though it was the most obvious thing to do to jumpstart the recovery from the Great Recession. That it was not undertaken when Democrats had a supermajority in both houses is also inexcusable. All right? Next point. A Tea Party-dominated GOP until recently has routinely rolled Obama in budget and debt negotiations. It took way too long for him to realize they had no intention of compromising or even cooperating. And last point, Obama has no answer for the deadlock that has paralyzed Washington and made the recovery much slower than it needed to be. All right. So, having established my credentials, I hope, of being relatively unbiased. To be fair to Obama, which, believe it or not, I'm also going to attempt for the Tea Party, I don't think they're all wrong on everything. He has tried to find common ground, and he looks more like an Eisenhower Republican to me than the Marxist devil that his more strident critics make him out to be. That's what he is. He's an Eisenhower Republican. But enough about what's wrong with the left. Tonight, my object is to paint a comprehensive picture of the extreme right using categories of good, bad, and the ugly with apologies to Clint Eastwood. Following that, I'm going to close with what lies beyond and beneath these categories, and let me say in advance that there are some good things in the way the right sees the world, but there are way too many bad and ugly things that compromise or even contradict the very principles that they're said to believe in. So let's begin with the good. So here comes the good. Much of what you're about to hear is taken from an article by Galston. By the way, this is a guy that is a frequent contributor to the Wall Street Journal, which is not exactly a leftist journal. The piece appeared in the Wall Street Journal and entitled "The Tea Party and the GOP Crack-Up." Here's the main idea. The Tea Party members are the inheritors of what's known as the Jacksonian tradition in American society. As such, they embrace a distinctive code with key traits of self-reliance, individualism, loyalty, and courage. So far, so good. As individuals, they are suspicious of federal power and do-gooders at home. They oppose federal taxes generally, while at the same time supporting Social Security and Medicare because they figure that those benefits have been earned. They revere the wisdom of the common man, scorning experts and pointing at intellectuals, seen as out-of-touch elites with agendas. They love Ted Cruz and Rush Limbaugh because in their eyes, each has the guts to say what the common man thinks and feels. Contradicting all the know-it-all elitists, which includes the rhinos and most especially the liberal media. Above all, they are angry and fearful. They're angry mostly at Obama, who's seen as a power-grabbing would-be tyrant who is supposedly anti-Christian and is also pursuing a strategy of building political support by increasing dependency on government. Think expansion of food stamps, the gaming of disability programs, pushing for immigration reform along with amnesty, all as key steps in his plan. But the tipping point is Obamacare, as if it gets implemented along with all the other goodies, America and its Constitution will be flushed down the drain. What will be lost is personal responsibility along with individual liberty. America then will be dominated by dependent minorities who assert their rights while assuming no personal responsibility whatsoever. They are what Romney called the 47% and what others sneeringly refer to as takers. And what the Tea Party fears, of course, is that step by step Obama is moving the USA towards a godless socialism, just like all the failed European states like Greece that have gone down the socialist road. So now you've been apprised of their worldview and Obama's role in it. And in many ways, this is my opinion, it's a nostalgic view which loves America in theory but hates it in fact. They want things to be the way they used to be, and they loathe the messy, multiracial democracy that is now changing things and taking over. They don't like it. All right. So that's their view. And they're welcome to their view. And some parts of it, particularly the abuse parts, people are gaming the system. Like, first thing you do when you get laid off from a job is you get a disability, right? Find a cooperating doctor. They advertise all the time. That's wrong. I agree with them. All right. Let's move on to the bad, though. The Tea Party has been bad for the GOP, bad for the government, bad for the economy, and bad for the social fabric. Other than that, they've been okay. The GOP now has a nascent civil war on its hands because its extremists would rather stand by their principles than win. The government has been shut down and our credit rating damaged because of Tea Party intransigence. Business leaders, including the Wall Street Journal and the National Association of Manufacturers, have pleaded with them not to go on kamikaze missions and play with fiscal fire when it comes to our credit rating, to no avail. The circular firing squads are yet forming and firing. The economy has been at least slowed by the sequester, not to mention the uncertainty of whether or not the government will pay its bills. In short, we have witnessed the spectacle of a single faction within one party, within one branch of government, insisting on having its way no matter what, and is willing to use blackmail and take hostages in the process. That's what's bad. Now here's why it's bad. They know they are right. Let me repeat that. They know they are right. John, I'm echoing you. You mentioned this earlier in a British context. But what's fundamentally bad about the Tea Party is that it misses the whole point of politics, making it impossible for them to compromise and negotiate in good faith. Because both of these require some allowance for the possibility that you might be wrong, if only on some things. As example, I'm willing to concede that they may even be right about some things in their Jacksonian worldview, but they do not appear to be ready to concede that they be wrong about anything. So, even against public opinion, even against settled law, even against Supreme Court validation, and even against clear evidence that Obama is not a Marxist, they hold out and refuse to budge, hoping that eventually public opinion will turn in their favor, and if it doesn't, well, then they still can't be wrong. It's just that, as usual, they've been betrayed by the rhinos, or the liberal media somehow or other distorted their message, which now brings us to the ugly. One ugly part is that the GOP has allowed itself to be bullied and run by far-right ideologues. What's made that so ugly is that any number of centrist Republicans have gone along with what they knew was wrong. It's one thing to stand up and fight for what you believe in. It's quite another to stand up and fight for what you don't believe in. Try it sometime. It's not easy. But it gets worse. Gerrymandering and rigged primaries that are dominated and controlled by extremist elements have made elected representatives from those districts into not just Tea Party puppets, but also made it possible for deep-pocket far-right donors to finance primary campaigns and thereby buy their very own representative. And the Supreme Court still thinks that money is speech. And it gets even worse. Ends now justify means, and any number of spin masters on the right now feel like what they want to believe in must be true, what they don't like must be false, and that innuendo and lying is okay now too, since their ends are so noble and so right, it's okay to stretch things quite a bit. I can't tell you the number of times, and believe it or not, I've tuned into Rush Limbaugh, and I've heard this phrase, and I've heard it from Hannity. I mean, I don't have any proof, but doesn't it figure that? So, Obama is not one of us. Now, here come the lies and the innuendos. He's actually a Kenyan who was influenced by Mau Mau terrorists. According to Glenn Beck, he waits white people. And women who want their health care plans to pay for birth control pills are sluts. And the president is really a Muslim who wants to take your guns away. Maybe your Bible, too. And where's his birth certificate anyways? And isn't he the food stamp president? I'm not making this up. These are all direct quotes. Why is he infringing on religious rights by insisting that Catholic hospitals provide birth control pills for women? And when he was an organizer in Chicago, didn't he hang out with one-time SDS terrorists? And didn't his pastor at a black church in Chicago say, "Goddamn America," in the Sunday morning sermon? And this is just the tip of an iceberg of innuendo and lies that is afloat in our political seas. And finally, the ugliest part of the GOP's acquiescence to the thug-like and low-down tactics of the Tea Party is that they have made a bed that the GOP is lying in but can never rest in. We, the people, therefore, need to help them up and out by encouraging that party to repudiate the Tea Party and move the GOP back to where they belong, which is closer to the center. Then they can win, then they can govern rather than obstruct. Then I and many others will again consider voting for Republicans, those who do not want no government at all, but a limited government that finally gets something done. The American people and the GOP deserve no less, which to me, it's a minimum expectation, demand, to expect to have a government that functions and actually gets something done. Wouldn't you say? All right, which brings me to my close and the beyond part. We've discussed the ideology for the most part. Now we get to address the overarching question of what about the money? Many true believers in the ideology believe and fight for their ideas passionately, but standing behind the ideology on both sides is a lot of money, and that money pushes and pushes hard to get its way. The money is what underwrites the think tanks, which formulate the doctrines, which write the scripts, which are drummed into us by the propaganda outlets that masquerade as centers of truth and fairness. This includes Fox and MSNBC. So I'm hitting at everybody now. So the bad news is that there are propaganda outlets hard at work telling us what to think, and these, by and large, have been successful as measured by the polarization that prevails across the land. Rush Limbaugh and Hannity pioneered in this vein, and belatedly Rachel and Ed added their voices to the din that passes for political discourse these days. The good news, however, is that we are still a democracy, which is to say that public opinion matters. If it didn't, the movers and shakers with the money would not be working overtime at telling us what to think and spending money in such prodigious amounts. So that's the good news. So there's hope. Hope for what, you ask? What I hope for is lots of things, but above all, I'm hoping that Lincoln was right. You can't fool all of us all the time. That's what I'm hoping for. And I do believe that we, the people, are growing smarter every day, although I will admit there are days that I'm not so sanguine. Look at the most recent special elections. The American people, by a clear majority, are not extremists and will not support them. Thus, Ted Cruz and folks way out on the far left, let's pick Abby Hoffman, because we got folks here from Chicago and they know who I'm talking about, they got a lot in common. And I'm going to tell you what they got in common. They both stand at the ends of the political spectrum, okay, and do you want to know why? Because they've lost their way. Because they've lost their way. And we need to fix that. That's all I got. Yeah, any questions? Well, he hung out. He was part of the
Who wants to
Chicago
be
7
first?
trials, right? I mean, so Chicago, well, I understand. You don't want to cling him. It's okay. But you know him. Go ahead, Joe.
Questions?
Yeah. I think I know what that is. Hello, is this on? Yes.
Bring it on, Jim.
All right. Since there is no party, there's no central organization, the Tea Party, of which I'm not associated, by the way. So this is not a Tea Party question. How do you associate any viewpoint with the Tea Party other than what certain vocal political people who link with them in some identity form say, all of which I believe you said tonight, I believe is true and correct. But they have no official party platform like the Democratic Party has or like the Republican Party has.
No, and neither does Occupy Wall Street. No, but it's by inference and by association. I mean, the people who are praising and advocating what I consider to be right-wing Tea Party views are, generally speaking, Fox and other, right-wing talk radio, right?
Yeah, media.
And the people that denounce them are generally MSNBC. Yeah, so by inference.
And so those two are on the opposite pegs of the dial.
I would think so. I would think so. And now, people might argue and say, well, if we send a truth squad in there, they'd make measurements and one would come up with 47%, one would come out with 73%. I'm not going to argue on that basis, but I am going to argue, I'm not going to argue who's righter and who's wronger, but I would argue that both of those stations certainly have an agenda.
I'll just make one comment about what my contact. I know it's a question time. I'm getting ready to leave, so I'm going to put a comment on my question in response to what he said. I've been to over 200 Democratic meetings with Tom as he's run for office. I support him. I support the things I've heard in those meetings. I've been to 0 Republican Party meetings. So I'm totally biased in that direction. But I've probably been to about 4 or 5 different Tea Party groups by invitation from someone I know. And I can tell you here locally, I can't describe what goes on in Chicago or Milwaukee or anywhere else. There isn't an iota of difference between what those people get up and say in a meeting, in a Tea Party meeting, than what I hear in a Democratic meeting.
Oh, I can believe that. I can believe that.
And so I've really never heard those kinds of words come out of people's mouths. And I don't doubt that they do because I've read them in the press just like you have.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, let me respond to that. I mean, I talked to my sister, who I think the world of, and she's hard right-wing, and she genuinely believes, that this is a socialist takeover is underway. And that all of these government programs, are catering to the takers, and that we want amnesty, for people of Hispanic origin, whether legal or illegal, because those add up to votes, right? And then they look at affordable care and say, oh, they're going to get hooked on that. Once they get hooked on that, they're going to like it, and then they're going to vote for Obama, right? And so all of this, in their view, in their worldview, adds up to it's a program power grab. In fact, and everything is a power grab. I mean, in this latest filibuster change in the rules, I mean, what words did Mitch McConnell use? Yet another power grab. Now, I doubt very much that that's coming out of small groups of patriotic Tea Party folks who are meeting here in Dallas who are genuinely concerned about the socialist takeover, But it's coming from someplace.
I've never heard that term. Never.
Right.
You do not see any power grabbing in Washington today. Is that correct?
Well, let's assume for the sake of discussion, okay, that there is some of that at work, and that you figure that the more you buy votes with these socialized programs, okay, the more you're going to stay in power, okay? Yeah, I see that there's a possibility for that, and I also see that some things need to be fixed. But I also see there's a hell of a lot of obstruction too, Ray. And I think you would admit to that too.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. I rest my case.
But it's a power grab. We would want to obstruct a power grab, would we not?
You would, but it depends on the particulars, Ray. I mean, you don't obstruct everything.
I didn't say everything.
I mean, all right. I mean, some things you fight tooth and nail against because it's wrong. I would join with any number of Republicans, okay? I say, we're sick and tired of these people who get laid off, they can't find a job, they don't want to work for half the money that they're making, and they go find a compliant doctor, and what they do is they get themselves a disability, okay? And now, okay, they're gaming the system. I would stand with them and fight again, and I wouldn't obstruct it. But it's very, very difficult for a Tea Party dominated GOP to say that they haven't been obstructionists on everything, particularly when any number of measures that have been put forward were Republican ideas in the past, which are now no good because Obama backed them.
Well, another question, maybe one more real quick, and you can get to Susie.
Okay.
You said many times that it's a Tea Party controlled GOP. Whenever you had Ted Cruz to be opposed by many in his own party as well as just about all of the Democrat Party, how can you say there is a Tea Party controlled Republican Party?
Well, that's statewide, and Texas is very red. I mean, let's see how well Cruz would do running outside the state of Texas for president. He'll never get the nomination. You know that, right?
No, he doesn't.
I mean, Ray, get real. He's not going to get the nomination. I mean, the base loves him. There's no question about it. The base in Texas particularly loves him. Okay, but I mean, how do you suppose he'd do in New Jersey?
Let's find out.
well, first he's got to get the nomination. I don't think that even the GOP could be that suicidal.
I think so. They can't.
Yeah, in the back. John.
Hi, Jim. I have.
Wait. Where's the microphone?
It's right here.
Yeah, one quick question. What do you think the future of the Tea Party is when it's pretty clear that the money men from Wall Street put the frighteners on the GOP?
I'd have to break it down into what I think it should be and what it's. I don't know for sure what it's going to be because there's so much big money there. But at the same time, at some point, whether it's fair or not, I mean, perception is everything in politics, right? A party cannot afford to be anti-minorities that are becoming majorities and anti-women. They can't. They just can't, and they can't win. I mean, and the results in the presidential elections the last few cycles have shown that to be true. Okay, the Bush family themselves, okay, knows that's true. And any number of moderates, okay, who have been characterized, of course, as rhinos, have been, for the most part, driven out of the party, you know, because they dared to say, well, you know, they dare to invoke, okay, the Buckley rule is like, hey, we got to nominate some people who can win, rather than somebody who passes this ideological litmus, which is way, way, way skewed to the right, particularly in the primaries, particularly in gerrymandered districts. So what's going to happen, I don't know. I tell you honest to God truth. Very strange things have happened in history, so I'm not qualified to say. What I would like to see happen, I would like to see the Republican Party come to their senses and drive these people out. And then I will seriously consider voting for, Colin Powell I could seriously consider voting for, depending on the issues. Huntsman, okay, from Utah, I could seriously considering voting for it. Even Christie, you know, who at least is willing to say he'll compromise on something. We don't have to agree on everything. But at the same time, the Tea Party does not need to obstruct everything because that they don't like, at the expense of having a dysfunctional government that is a disgrace. So, I mean, what I'm most disappointed in is that the Republicans know better. They know better. And they're going along with things that they know are wrong. And I understand, you know, there's the money, and then there's, you know, the anger of infuriated people who've been listening to Rush Limbaugh too much in these gerrymandered districts, okay, and there's consequences and all this sort of stuff. But boy, at some point, I mean, you got to make government work. And you got to think in terms of not the next election cycle, but I mean, where is the party? Where's the country going to be in 20 years, 10 years, 5 years? No, I got to get reelected. In the back, yes, sir.
My question is, you said that you were dissatisfied with Obama for 3 at least reasons. Number one, the stimulus, the passing of the Affordable Care Act, or as I call it, Heritage Care, or the implementation of it through the website, which I give you. Okay, so the stimulus, most of which was in tax cuts, you know, was a pretty modest thing. And then, of course, Obama couldn't pass a real stimulus, which would have been more of a workers, to promote the infrastructure that way. That couldn't possibly have passed. But my question is, really, what did you expect? I mean, he could not have passed an inch to the left health care plan than was actually passed, which is from the Heritage Foundation. He couldn't have passed a stimulus that wasn't mostly tax cuts. Well, so that's pretty right wing.
Well, this is no, it isn't. It's a more. I differed with the Obama administration on their priorities. I mean, their priority, and I think it was noble, to say, we're going to go after, or we're going to get the 30% of people, okay, who don't have health care, we're going to get them health care. It's a morally responsible and wondrous thing to do, for which I applaud them. Politically, it's unwise. It's unwise because 70% of the people either like what they got or they don't want you to mess with it, okay? But let me finish. So, my view is this. If it had been me, of course, they don't bother to call me and ask me what they think they should do. But when he had a supermajority, he should have gone after the infrastructure first. He could have pushed it through a lot more easily. That would have benefited, politically speaking, it would have benefited a wider range of people. Okay.
Supermajority is arguing it really didn't happen. There was an Franken issue. There was an issue with the senator in Massachusetts.
He did have a supermajority, but the problem was the lobbyists didn't like the idea of a single-payer system. And it got tied up in committee until it was in the shape and form they liked. And then when it came out of committee, and I can tell you this, every single healthcare stock on the New York Stock Exchange went up. Now you tell me who won. Okay, now my view, my scale of priorities would have been, you go after the infrastructure first because that'll put people back to work. Then maybe they'll have some money in their pocket. They can afford to buy some health insurance. You know, and then you, and it was a gamble and a political calculation. But you might want to ask yourself this question: do you suppose it would have done as badly in the midterms 2 years after he was elected? Okay, if they hadn't had Obamacare to run against? I mean, ask yourself that question. I mean, you wouldn't have lost the House as badly as they did and taken that shellacking, okay, if he hadn't have given them an issue, okay, that they used up one side and down the other. But again, this is just opinion, and 50 cents, you can get yourself a cup of coffee. Yes, sir.
Yeah, some observations about the Tea Party. They've lost 4 Senate seats over the past two in 2010, Nevada and Delaware, then Indiana and Missouri, this past election, because of some jawbone stuff some of the Tea Party senators have said. I think the Republicans are finally beginning to wake up to who they invited to the dinner. Now, because here recently, in 2 months, they've lost in 2 primaries, one in Alabama and one in Louisiana. The mainstream Republican defeated the Tea Party candidate in both of those elections. So I think Republicans are beginning to see that, as I said a little while ago to someone else, they invited a skunk to a Thanksgiving dinner and they can't get rid of it. So they're beginning to wise up to see that these extremists are causing them some seats. The question I would have for you, 15 January is the deadline date for the new agreement they have to keep the government open. Do you think they would be, our distinguished senator here from Texas will spearhead another government shutdown? If they do, that'll further embitter people against them. That's my opinion. So what do you think is going to happen come 15 January? Are they working on some agreement now?
Well, for the little guy, and he's giving voice to what they think and what they feel. My view is that Cruz is standing up for Cruz. Cruz is out to get Cruz advanced, promoted, and maybe get the nomination for president, and he'll use the Tea Party base to the extent that it's strong enough and powerful enough to support him to get to move that way. I think that the Republican Party or the GOP they'd be fools, okay, to allow the Tea Party to completely take over, because I think the same thing would happen that usually happens in most elections when an extremist gets nominated. Now, I can go back to Goldwater, and we all know what happened. Well, you don't, you're not old enough, but anyways, Goldwater, had a resounding defeat. Now, lest you think I'm being, unduly harsh, does the name McGovern ring any bells? McGovern was trashed, okay? I mean, I think he won 1 state. Okay, but the problem is that the American people, they want 2 things. A, they want the government to work and get something done. B, they're practical. They don't give a damn about ideology. The government needs to govern from the center, which means they need to compromise. You need a center-right party, you need a center-left party. They meet in the middle, they get something done. I mean, how could it be? It's obvious. I mean, it's obvious what needs to happen, and how the Republicans have convinced themselves that by going to the far-right extremes in view of history, in view of everything, in view of what Bill Buckley and Barry Goldwater told them with tears in their eyes 50 years ago, I mean, is beyond me. I don't get it. I mean, I really don't.
Think we hit another 15 January, another showdown there? You don't know?
I don't know. I really don't know. It'll depend on, I think, taking a very narrowly cynical view, it will depend on how much political advantage Cruz could think he could get in promoting his presidential aspirations, okay, by engineering one. But that's very, very tricky. It's really tricky because, you could win the convention. McGovern won the convention. Goldwater won the convention, right? But there's always the general election. How are you going to win the general election? The answer is that the Republicans aren't. Not with far-right extremist candidate, they can't. I mean, I'll just flatly state that that's the case, just based on historical evidence. And But it does happen that given the process, the nominating process and the rules under which you operate, if you get an extremist group that controls things, you could wind up with another disaster in the making, at least as far as the party is concerned, that fields an extremist candidate.
My question is, do you think that the extremists, or do you think that the normal everyday Republican members are okay with the extremist agenda of limiting equal rights in the form of access to health care, access to voting, access to abortion, access to marriage, all of these things that the extremist part of the Republican Party has been pushing, and Virginia can tell us that they had to suffer the consequences of their actions. Do you think that the regular Republican Party knows that this policy is bad for their party, or do you think they're okay with it?
Oh, they're not stupid. They know. They certainly know what, you know, these not too long-range consequences are. But unfortunately, they've created a monster. You got these gerrymandered districts. You got guys who want to be reelected in this next election cycle. Okay, they have a primary system, okay, that, well, you saw what the primary system did to Romney. It turned him into a pretzel. It did. I mean, here he is, he's a Republican moderate from one of the most liberal states in the Union, and he winds up making a fool of himself by denouncing everything that he did, that he said was a good deal back in his home, back in the Bay State. But I mean, but that really is a problem of the Republican Party's creation. I mean, they're not only hooked on the money, but they got these gerrymandered districts, and then they got these guys who know that as long as they keep their base happy back in their gerrymandered district, everything's going to be fine and they'll get reelected. You know, just keep holding the line. I have no solution to that. George.
Yeah, Jim. What I'd like to know is the Tea Party, as we all know, was funded by the Koch brothers. They went in air conditioning buses to Washington, and Occupy Wall Street slept on the ground in Washington. Now, my basic question is, they took over at the midterm election. Do you think it was the idea that it was just a midterm election that put the Tea Partiers in it? Or was it actually, was it more apathy that put the Tea Parties in it because people didn't come out to vote?
Well, this is my personal opinion, and Obama gets elected when? In the midst of this huge meltdown crisis, right? Why? I mean, America, in my view, managed to overcome twin prejudices, right? And prejudice against colored people, that's an old-fashioned term, black people, and intellectuals. Why? Because they needed a nerd to fix the problem. That's why, in my opinion. So they elect this nerd, and so he's in there, and he's got a supermajority, and 2 years later, the problem's not fixed. I lost my house, I lost my job, I'm still unemployed, you know. Cancel my insurance, what am I going to do? Then there was the gift, politically, okay, of the Affordable Care Act, which got rammed through without a single Republican vote. All right? And now, armed with these two weapons, right? A, he didn't fix it. B, okay, I mean, there's going to be death panels, and you're going to have to give up your doctor, right? Grandma's going to be pushed over the cliff. In my opinion, that's why he lost in the midterms. And I think it was, and this goes back to an earlier question, he would not have had this sort of problem if he'd have gone after the infrastructure first. Because I think there'd have been broader political support, and there wouldn't have been a ready-made issue, okay? And there'd be more people working, more people with money in their pocket, who could have afforded, some sort of health insurance. So the reason that I think they took such a shellacking in the midterms, he didn't fix the problem. And the American people are impatient. I want it fixed, I want it fixed now. You didn't fix it. So now you got all these Republican governors coming in, and you got, now a Republican-controlled House. And I'm quite sure that Obama has heard internally from his staff, are you sure we did the right thing way back when, because it's really cost us politically. I mean, it really has hamstrung him. He's been unable to put together any sort of working coalition to get anything done. And of course, he takes the blame. So, anybody else? Yes, Susie.
I guess I'm just trying to find a ray of hope here. Okay, where can we go now? And I think that it starts with all of us waking up and realizing that the lies are being propagated on both sides. That you talked about the money, money being speech, and we were discussing here earlier that what can we do about Citizens United, about overturning that decision, about making money not being the same thing as speech?
Well, I'm going to fall back on my usual answer, which could be the easy way out. George takes to the streets, okay, and he does not take the easy way out, and I'll applaud him for that. I take a different approach. My approach is you got to change minds first, and that's one of the reasons I'm up here. Okay.
Thank you.
So, and to me, supposedly, religion and politics are out-of-bounds subjects that you never should talk about to anybody, especially with strangers, right? And I would agree that you need to be careful. You do need to be careful because you certainly don't want to step on somebody's toes and say, "Oh, you've lived your whole life wrongly. You're stupid." I mean, how can you think? You don't want to do that. But at the same time, it's possible to have an intelligent dialogue, okay? And one of the ways I approach this when I hesitantly, I've done this with guys like on our softball team, George. I say, well, I see things this way, and it looks pretty bad to me, I really would like to be proven wrong. I mean, can you straighten me out on this? I mean, am I wrong on this? And that sort of. I think you can make some headway that way. I really do. But I do believe, though, it absolutely has to start with changing people's minds, okay? And the one thing that people should just be absolutely outraged about is the incompetence and the inefficiency and the inability of Washington to get anything done. I mean, you hear this crap coming from, the right about how, well, if we had a businessman in there, he'd run things right. I'll tell you what, if anybody ran a business like they ran Washington, the stockholders would be in revolt. Yeah, the stockholders would be in revolt. Okay, they wouldn't put up with this for a minute. The CEO would be fired, they'd get another CEO in there, and they'd fix it, because, yeah. So, but I mean, if the Tea Party's idea of running a business is like, is obstructing everything and saying no to everything and not finding a way to get things done, I mean, I'm sorry to say that they're just wrong. I mean, no is not a policy. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
hear me now? No. So I think there's some underlying, there are some underlying assumptions in your talk. So if you would just confirm or deny what I think I understand. From your talk, I think you would be supportive of, well, I have like so many questions, I forgot where I was going to start. Would it be bad if there were socialism?
Yeah.
Because
I have no problem, okay, with being capitalist. You know, I think that people who take risks, want to start businesses, have a right, you know, to make money. I mean, I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is taking the proceeds, okay, and then buying influence and purchasing congressmen and then tilting the playing field in your favor so you don't have to pay any taxes. I have a big problem with that. So, I mean, but as far as capitalism is concerned, capitalism is just fine.
So for instance, if you take the Affordable Health Care Act,
yeah,
right, there's the underlying assumption that this medicine is a good thing, right?
No, I wouldn't say that it's a good thing. I would say it's a flawed thing. I would say
what's flawed? Medicine or the
Affordable Care Act?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying with the Affordable Health Care Act assumes that AMA medicine is a good thing and that we all want and we all need standard medical care. It does assume that because it's not offering other types of health care.
You mean like holistic health care and stuff like that?
Yeah, like stuff that in my experience, my very visceral experience and experience with other people, that actually works, as opposed to kills people or doesn't work, takes a lot of money from people before it kills them, that sort of scenario. And that's what I see played out. And so nobody has offered me, hey, here's some acupuncture. So I don't want to pay for the affordable health care, which is not actually very affordable to me. I want a doctor to sew me up if I get cut or set my bones, if they get broken. I'm not really into x-rays, but I might do one of those from time to time. So somebody's trying to make me buy something that I absolutely do not want to spend my money on. I'd rather have a new purse, shoes. So my question is, what are you going to do with me with the Affordable Health Care Act? And I'm not a Tea Partier, and I'm not a Republican, and I'm not a Democrat.
Well, the only answer that I can give you is that we live in a majority rule type system. I spent...
Is that a democracy?
No, let me finish. I spent, I think, 40, 50 years paying into Social Security before I got any benefits back. I had no choice.
Right.
You know, and that's the way you make programs like that work. Now, you can argue that health care is not a right, and that's a legitimate debate to have, which I'm not going to get into. I mean, my prejudice is, and it is, my preference is every other industrialized nation on the face of the earth does have universal health care. And the way you do it, to get economies of scale, unfortunately, okay, is by making it mandatory for people to participate in it, even if they don't want it, and even if they're well. I mean, that's the way group insurance plans work, by the way. I mean,
so then
healthy people underwrite the hospital costs for very sick people until such time as they become very sick, and then it reverses. Mm-hmm. But if you're complaining about the tyranny in the majority, I hear you. I mean,
yeah, because I mean, I am confused. I thought we were a republic in theory and not a democracy, but I guess we're a democratic republic.
No, we're a republic. We have a representative system, but the way the system is supposed to work is that, unlike the Tea Party, when things come down that you don't like, I mean, you obey the law and you go along with it even though you don't like it. Now, if you don't like the law, then what you do is what Obama advised the Republicans to do, is you win the Senate, win the presidency, and then repeal Obamacare.
But I think certain religious groups are exempt from...
Yeah, they are.
But so why, I mean, I don't understand. I'm not Muslim, and I'm not, I think there's another religious group that is exempt. But, I mean, why, and this is what I don't understand, how this is any different than socialism. The Affordable Health Care Act, that seems very socialistic to me.
Well, let me put it this way. There's no such thing on the face of the planet as a government that is totally capitalistic or totally socialistic. There's no such thing.
Right.
I mean, all governments on the face of the earth are admixtures of both. So, I mean, you may criticize and not like certain socialist elements that are built in to our system, and you're welcome to, and you have a right to. Okay, but to say that, you know, because we've got some socialist elements in there that we're a totally socialist system is not accurate. That's not true.
Even though for me and the money that I currently make, it's not affordable for me to purchase that. There is no other perspective that you. I mean, when does it become truly socialist or fascist or communistic to make that you want to make me buy health care? Where is that line? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, that's a good question that I'm not qualified to answer, but I mean, I can tell you that every government on the face of the earth is an admixture of both. I mean, you have capitalist elements where people, entrepreneurs, are rewarded for their efforts and they get to make money, you know. But then you also have a taxation system, which, let's be honest about it, tax systems redistribute income. They just do. Now, you may say, well, that's not right, but I mean, I went to a state university, my sister went to a state university. Lots of people underwrote my education. So you can argue that that's socialistic? Probably is, but I'm glad they did. Now, I'm still paying taxes in the city of Garland, and my kids have been in high school for 20 years. Why should I have to continue to pay taxes, you know, to maintain high schools in Garland, Texas? And because that's socialistic, right? Or let's take the interstate highway system, right? Why did Eisenhower have to go and build that? I mean, we could have just gone ahead and we could have hired contractors, and entrepreneurs would have, and then they'd be all toll roads, like what we're seeing now. Okay, you know, but in fact, Eisenhower probably couldn't, in today's environment, probably couldn't get an interstate highway system through because that would be viewed as socialistic. So, to me, the choice is not whether or not we're going to be socialists or capitalists. The choice is what kind of blend are you going to have? And the blend that you're going to have has got to offer enough incentives. Ray, you'll like this. It's got to offer enough incentives, okay, for people to take risk and to make money, okay, and to get ahead. And they should not be cheated out of that opportunity. But at the same time, there are poor kids in ghettos who've got good minds that could be one hell of a natural resource for this country if they could be properly educated. And I wasn't a poor kid, but I was close. Came pretty close. And I went to a very cheap state university, and it's a crime these days at how costs have gone through the roof and made it unaffordable to people. Although, and that's another, we don't need to get into Pell Grants and the racket that the private institutions have got into. Okay, but that's another issue. So.
Well, Jim, first off here, did anyone bring up what the acronym of the Tea Party actually stands for?
No, go ahead.
Taxed enough already. The Tea Party started off as a bipartisan movement for petition for redress of grievances. Don't shake your head at me, I was there. One of the biggest people going after our taxing system was former Congressman Jim Traficant. He was a Democrat. I'm telling you that this was bipartisan. The mainstream Republican Party, which is an authoritarian monster, took over and basically pushed out the good Democrats who wished to have a better system here in this country with less taxes. If you want to speak, yes. Okay. Well, all this business about the Koch brothers and so forth, you got George Soros funding about, Move On. How many groups does he fund? You have capitalists, very wealthy capitalists, funding both sides. I don't see where that demonizes the Tea Party because they've got like one rich funding source. So what's your response?
Okay.
I did ask a question.
You did ask a question, yeah. All right, here's my response. Let's give the Tea Party advocates their due and say that there's some legitimacy to their claim that the government is getting too big and it's trying to, that it's launching all of these social programs, okay, for the purpose of buying votes. Let's just assume that, okay, to begin with, all right? So I think a legitimate question to ask people on the left is that, are you willing to investigate it? And if so, and if you find out that that's true, what are you willing to do to stop it? That would be one answer, one part of the answer to my question. But here's a question that I would put to guys on the right at the same time. If the common man is so smart, according to Jacksonianism, why does Rush Limbaugh spend so much time telling them what to think? How come? I mean, isn't the common man smart already? Why do you have to spend all of this money to tell people what to think?
What do you think brought the Democratic Party to Texas?
I don't know. You tell me.
The Civil War. I come from a yellow dog Democrat.
Okay.
I was a Republican one time. But my father was a yellow dog Democrat because the carpetbaggers from the North after the Civil War took half his farm away from him. That's it.
What's a yellow dog?
They'd vote for a yellow dog before they'd vote for a Republican. I knew that. Anybody else? Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. I'm going to sit down and...
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to be first? George? Or is it Susan? Susie wants to be first? Here, she can always say that.
Susan, did you just X me out?
Ladies first. I'll keep it really brief because I know we've got a lot of people here tonight and we have to clear this room by 8:45, correct? Okay. We've got to be ready to pack up and go. Okay, this is free speech. Number one, Jim Love. I always want to hear what you have to say. So thank you again for putting it together so succinctly. Really appreciate that because you come from the perspective of educating and helping us understand concepts that are very, very challenging for a lot of people. And now I'm going to say one reason I think that the concepts and the acceptance of the concepts is so difficult right now is because the fires have been flamed. Again, if people know what they want, if people, your parting comment, if people know what to think, if we're all smart, intelligent, wonderful people who have brains that work, then why is so much money being paid to sway us one way or another? Okay, here's a post from a good friend on Facebook. I've never met him. older gentleman, Frank, who lives in San Antonio. The point of uncovering the lies propagated by the fill-in-the-blank machine, it could be any political party, is not the lies themselves, but to uncover the objective to be accomplished by the acceptance of the lie as a true fact. Most waste the time on the true-false aspect of the equation, and none on the why and the for what. When we start looking at their aims, is when the horror of the declared war against the citizens in our communities hits us. And yes, we are embroiled in a civil war, one that causes many tens of thousands of unnecessary and preventable deaths year per year, every year. The lies and the obstruction and the systematic dismantling of our rights and social safety nets are just the fields where the partisan skirmishes tally their victims. We are being told what to think time and time again. And we've got a lot of very intelligent people in this room. And we've got a lot of very intelligent friends and family members. And we have got to get to the bottom of why are people biting that hook time and time again? Why will they so quickly believe such slander as, oh, Obama's a Muslim. Oh, Obama wasn't born in this country. Oh, that fake birth certificate. Or any number of other things. Okay, those are just the surface. There's something going on underneath it all. And I think of it in terms of a social experiment to see just how far they can push us into insanity. And we've got to be the sane ones to call it back and say, no more, I'm not buying your crap anymore. Thank you for letting me speak.
Who wants to be next? George.
I wanted to be first.
Well, you're going to be second. Ladies first. See, that's what she said. She said ladies first, George.
No, Susie, I'm just kidding. I really thought that Jim was going to take a topic I was going to speak on. But Jim is a much nicer person than I am. Some may call me partisan to the extreme. And they may be right. I myself my feeling is that what the Tea Party and the far right has done is what our enemies couldn't do to ourselves. What our arch enemies couldn't do, they did. And they're doing. And basically what it means is they have stopped government function. And I think this is a crying shame. You know, I elect people or vote for people to do my business, not to have it stopped completely. But anyway, we're talking about money in government. We have 12,000 lobbyists in Washington. They're not all on K Street now, they've expanded. We have a revolving door in government. The number of former members of Congress that have gone into the industries and so forth that they were given money for is 373. 67 senators, 306 House members. And right now it's to the point where we better start realizing what's happening. And money, the Citizens United has completely fouled up our system. It was pretty fouled up before, but money is not free speech, no doubt in my mind. In Ireland they had, if you were a homeowner, you could vote. it wasn't a religious war there. It was an economic war. The Catholics didn't own homes, so they couldn't vote. So this is what we really got to look at. Right now, we just had the anniversary of President Kennedy's assassination. At that particular time, the rate was 65% taxation on the wealthy. Now it's 34%. So let's take a look at it. During the Kennedy administration, I had just got out of the service. I got a decent job. I was able to support myself, to buy a car, etc., etc. So it wasn't a bad deal. And now there's so many people out of work that are struggling, and people call them the takers. Well, I think most people want jobs. No doubt in my mind. They don't want to be takers. And a lot of these takers are the working poor. And it's a crying shame that we're trying to strip this net away from them. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Gotta be next.
Yeah.
Al Holman. You have 5 minutes.
Albert. Well, I really appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate what you have presented today. I see things a little differently. I have been trying all of my life to find out what the truth is, and not to just believe what I believe. As a matter of fact, years ago, sitting down with myself, I decided everything I believe in is on this table for all challenges. Come on, challenges. If there's something, even my religion, if there's something in here that you can prove is wrong, then I didn't want it. That was scary to do that, but I was going through a period of time when I had a lot of intelligence service people coming through my life and totally changing my viewpoint of reality, because it's not what it looks like out of that window. One thing that I think is very clear in this world is that we are all so terribly manipulated. And what they do is, in almost every aspect of life, they have this religion fighting this religion. They have this party fighting this, left, right, and then a myriad of other things in between. And it's all distraction. It's like they have got us all complaining to the waiter, my coffee is cold, and the fact is the Titanic is sinking under us. It's almost to that extent. This is not the same country I even grew up in, and I'm only 72 years old. I've seen remarkable changes that to me are very scary. It's like I was hearing today about, was it yesterday, John, that Alex Jones was downtown, and the Dallas police came up. There was a group of people, and they were relatively polite and talking, conversing, and then a group from the sheriff's office and a Homeland Security person came up, and below the camera level, Alex Jones was punched in the ribs by one of these Homeland Security people, and nobody had asked anybody to shut down and move or stop doing what they were doing. They were trying to foment violence so that they could have a violent session of their own and get it in the news and say how bad these people are that listen to Alex Jones. This to me is scary as hell, frankly. And I see more and more of this going on. I see more and more that we are being edged into the status of a police state, and it's all because of emergency, right? Whenever you want people to do something, you create emotion in them. And how do you do that? Usually with something very tragic. And I do not believe in coincidences. I have said here before. And when you have all of these shooting incidences around the world, like Aurora and Sandy Hook and all of that, right before the UN trying to get the great worldwide gun ban treaty, something's not good here. And I mean, that's another whole issue. But what I see is, if there's anything that we need to do, it is to preserve the governmental form set up by our founding fathers under the Constitution of the United States of America. And any party, any group, any subgroup that is taking us away from the rule of law as set out in that Constitution is our enemy. I don't care what particular little issue that you love so much. I don't care what it is. If it's taking us away from the rule of law by the Constitution, we're in danger from the people who are doing that. I don't care how loving and how well-intended they are. If what they're trying to do is taking us away from our Constitution, this government was so remarkably conceived by our founding fathers that when we had our Civil War, the Tsar of Russia put his navy in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and told France and Germany, hands off, you will not get your colonies back, and if you try, you will be at war with with Russia. Otto Bismarck, who our history books still call this great militaristic leader, who was the most brilliant politician, a negotiator of bringing all of these warring city-states that were the area that we call Germany, with different languages and dialects, bringing them all together by allying friend with friend, so that in mutual defense, so that if they went to war with this guy who was this other guy's friend but my enemy, then my friend would have to go to war with me. He did a spiderweb of this all over Germany and brought the whole thing into a nation, and then founded the process of Hochdeutsch, High German, which is one language for all of them. They had many languages in the German, many dialects in the German language. Otto Bismarck is reported to having said back in the 1800s that the experiment being carried out in the United States of America may hold the hope of humanity for for freedom in the future, something to that effect. These people were visionaries. Our founding fathers were visionaries. The only one that comes even close to me to the ability to see these things in a political leader in the United States was John Kennedy. And you see what happened to him. He was trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve because he knew it was a criminal organization. Am I the only one you do that to?
No, she did it to me, but I was quicker than you.
Okay. Is that an official part of this program? Because you usually stand up and say stop. So get your exercise. I think what we need to do is stop being so divided into our little issues, and where we have things that are important in the big issues, we need to support each other on it. I'm in another little group called the Activists for Truth that meets over, John mentioned it, over at on Tuesdays at the Mockingbird La Madeleine. And they're supporting other groups that are trying to get the big picture moved along. And they're bringing people in. A lot of what we have in our news media, do not believe your news media. It is totally controlled. It's totally bought by the people with large amounts of money. Money rules the world. The Federal Reserve largely supports the CIA, and I've had several long conversations with the Moriartys who were in Libya during that war, and 180 degrees the opposite of what we got in the news media. We need to join together and start seeing through these things we believe and start probing for the truth, particularly in the areas where we don't believe. Anyway.
John Beasley. You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Well, I used to think about the Tea Party. Personally, I think they're a dead duck, so I'm not much worried about them, because economic reality will out. Talking about Bismarck, now Bismarck, of course, invaded France in 1870, and France had to pay reparations. Now, Bismarck was amazed that 20 years later, France economically was more advanced than Germany. I won't go into why, but reality will out. Now, what happened recently with the Tea Party was they brought this country to the brink of economic disaster. They basically said, hey, we're going to stop the government and we're not going to pay our bills. That's to say, we're not going to pay interest on our overseas bonds. Now, let me give you some numbers. The negative wealth of America vis-a-vis the rest of the world is 4 trillion. Okay? Negative wealth. Okay? That's to say, that's the negative wealth. Now, the amount of reserves in the Federal Reserve, okay, to pay the debts is something like 250 billion. Now, the gold is about 20 billion. Now, the talk of going back on the gold standard, you see, is nonsense. You just don't have the gold to do it. Now, so you've got 250 billion in reserve. Now, each year, you're about 400 billion into the red. Now, what the money men in Wall Street knew was, look, you're walking the precipice here. I mean, economists are divided. They're discussing how long can this charade go on? How long can this economy stay afloat? Because obviously America is not paying its debts. One day it won't even pay the interest on its debts. Now, how long can that last? Personally, I'm looking to this very closely. For example, the euro's in great trouble. You realize in the last 10 years, the euro has gained 50% in value vis-a-vis the dollar. Okay? Now, what will happen? I mean, this is all a confidence game. I mean, the whole deal in economics and finance is confidence. And if the Tea Party go at it again, and confidence is lost, the dollar could collapse. It really could. You're that close to it. Now, what happened recently was the money man went to the GOP and said, stop these clowns. And if they play the game in January, which they no doubt will, they'll be stopped. They'll be stopped. That's why I'm not worried about them. Now, Jim, I think sensible people will have to get back, okay? Because the money men won't let the charade go on. So really, to my mind, the Tea Party's dead. I mean, because they can do so much damage, and they've already tried it. You come right very close to it. So economic reality will out, and that's why the Tea Party is dead, in my opinion.
Okay, who's next? Oh, you're next.
Ray, what about Ray?
Ray comes.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. One of the things that's been happening over these few days here around the 50th anniversary is I've actually been listening to the words of John F. Kennedy. And I would agree with the author who's coming out with the book, John F. Kennedy, The Conservative. What we're talking here in this room is what government is going to do for us. Yes, this program or that. Well, we just need to give this message to our elected officials that, government can do this and we need this safety net or that safety net and so forth. Whatever happened to the safety nets our grandparents had, our great-grandparents? They couldn't afford the kind of health care we have right now because we have an abusive system here. I agree with Tracy. This trying to support the current medical system is an abomination. I have an opinion, that's it. And as far as government programs, I grew up with blacks in my family because my father was a 4-state regional director for Project Head Start. He was right up there with the top. He also worked later on, I think, in Office of Economic Opportunity. His testimony to his son was that as far as he knew, he was the only person running a straight game that he'd ever run into in government programs. Everyone else was using the government, the people's money basically as their own private slush fund, and doing this and that, nepotism, all kinds of abuses, and just, pushing it under the rug. This was Republicans and Democrats both. Government is our problem. Government is not the solution. Over there on the table, I have conference material from a conference that happened earlier this year where 2 different IRS agents came and spoke. One of them actually went to jail about how the IRS system of individual income tax is totally fraudulent. One of the agents actually confronted the top guy at the IRS, Rosati, when he was there, and said, please show me where the individual owes income tax. Please give me the code in here, show me where it is. It's all patched together. They spent what, how many billions of dollars trying to get the IRS computerized, and it failed because it's all fraud. Government is the biggest fraud game going. Over there on the table, I have the testimony of a former CIA agent who flew drugs for the government, flew some of our top officials around. Our government's in the drug trade. I have the testimony of a former head of Los Angeles FBI. When he retired, he started investigating. He found out the government is involved in supporting the international trafficking in children in the sex trade. This is what goes on inside that beltway and in the outlying parts of what government is doing. Now, y'all can talk about trying to tweak the system a little bit here and there to support it. I would like to clean house, and I would like to get good people in of either persuasion, Republican or Democrat, but a whole new crew. And we need to turn this surveillance society on our elected officials and off of the public. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Gabby next.
What about Ray, Tom?
Oh, Ray's, he always likes to go. Ray, you want me next?
Follow me. Well, if we could leave an impression with any one of you who are still ready for thinking and being aware and able to change our minds, that government is the problem. Whenever we start off and we say that government needs to do this, that is our mistake. Government does not need to do this. It doesn't need to do anything but give us the freedom. It does need to protect us. That is the constitutional imperative for the government. But whenever we think that government is going to take care of us, it is going to fix everything, most of government activity is to fix what went wrong before. It happens all the time. Here's the part that I wrote down. That was just bonus. In my recollection, when Obamacare was being debated in Congress, there arose an outcry from the citizenry begging them to stop. Congress, however, seeing its chance of a lifetime, all but ignored the very people who had elected them. Millions of Americans were urging lawmakers to stop, to wait, but these politicians were not about to let a nationalized health care slip away from them. They pressed the agenda all the more harder. There were threats, there were intimidations, and there were payoffs to get the votes that they needed. Nebraska, Louisiana are two. Obamacare then became law without a single Republican vote. Not one. The Republicans have stood strong in opposing Obamacare. But when grassroots Americans were snubbed by their own elected officials, they knew that their government was not doing the will of the people. But instead, they were forcing through a very unpopular program. These people, the grassroots America, were the Tea Party and are the Tea Party. They have no one leader. They are from all classes of people, the rich, the poor, the middle class, color. It goes the whole spectrum. What unites them is the sobering reality that they are losing their country. They're losing their human rights. They're losing their freedoms. This is what unites grassroots Americans. They're either part of the Tea Party or they're not. They are sympathizers, like myself, but this is what is uniting much of the country. They see the country as originally founded just absolutely going away. It is being stolen. And these people want to restore the lost heritage of America that has been either eroded or undermined or just sold out by professional politicians. One word has been used tonight, or two words really, excess and extremism. Those are radical words. We say we don't like excess. We don't like extremists. But you're going to have to be specific when you're talking about these things. And I'll go ahead and do it. I almost changed my mind. But whenever you have your country being taken over by what you feel like are radicals, whatever you have to do, you make sure your country isn't stolen. And so extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. It is no vice. Whatever you have to do, you save your country. If you had a child who's about to be hurt, you would say, I don't care if it hurts me. I'm going to take care of it. I am going to be extreme. And you do whatever is drastically necessary to do the right thing. Moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. That is Barry Goldwether. I agree with him. But you do have to know what you're talking about in the specifics when you say something is extreme or something is excess. Today, we are seeing the sad specter of the Justice Department spying on the AP, on the Associated Press. The IRS is targeting conservative groups. The NSA surveillance, lies about Benghazi, the blatant lies about Obamacare. These are things that Americans, you and I, ought to be opposing. We ought to be outraged over it. Why aren't we? If you like your insurance, you can keep it. In the Obamacare bill, it was stated, as a matter of fact, that probably a lot of people would lose their insurance. And we had the lies that if you like it, you can keep it. It was in the bill itself. This administration is rife with corruption. The president has stated very clearly he will reward his friends, he will punish his enemies. And let me ask you, is this equal justice under the law? Is this the kind of America we want? And we are trying to blame the Tea Party? I cannot think of a more misplaced blame than to blame the Tea Party. I've got more.
Well, we know that. Okay, who's next? You're next. 5 minutes.
5 minutes, folks. I hope it won't take that long. All right, very seldom speak up, but here it is. I'm going to give you a weapon. My microphones, you can't? All right. There you go. Anyway, when I went to work for the government, they made me a killer. Okay, I'm going to show you how to use. They teach you what to use your opponent's weight against him or look for his weakness. The United States Supreme Court gave you a weapon when they said free speech is money. If I was to come into this restaurant and yell the word F-I-R-E as loud as I can through this entire restaurant and create a panic, what would happen to me? That's right. Now, think about this. When someone takes their free speech and yells that word, doesn't have to be the F-I-R-E, but it can be another word that causes a panic. What are they guilty? The same logic applies. So when that free speech is being used to panic you, to injure other people, they should be breaking the law and they should go to jail. That's it.
Okay, who's next? There's got to be a next. Oh.
Yeah, I'll be real fast.
Really?
I'll be real fast. One of the things I find kind of interesting about, the Congress is pretty much not accomplishing anything right now. What I find kind of funny is that especially the House has been spending a lot of time repealing Obamacare 48 times or whatever it is. But we have huge majority of the American public coming out and saying, one, we support increase in the minimum wage. And that's on across Republicans, independents, and Republicans. Independent Democrats through Republicans, huge majorities, like above 80% support it. They're not doing it. Huge majority of people support all kinds of other issues. They're not doing it. So the question is, and it's not like it's like half the population. No, it's like above 80%. And there's multiple, like Rachel Maddow says this all the time, there's like 3, 4, 5, 6 issues like this. Okay, I can't remember them all. But the point is that they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. And who are the people in the most power? The question is, the House is holding up everything the Senate's trying to do. Okay, and of course the House is, spending most of their time, trying to repeal Obamacare that has already been held up by the Supreme Court. Whether you support it or not, like me, I believe we should set up a single payer system. That's the only way we can fix it. And really, if the extreme liberals and President Obama would have gotten what he wanted, we would have a single payer system now. The only reason we don't is because it wouldn't pass, so he compromised to try to get it passed. And they said, okay, yes, the Republicans said, oh yes, we would support it if we added this and we took away that. And we took away a public option from the exchange. And then in the end, only Arlen Specter was the only one that voted for it. Okay, whose fault is that, really? They compromised. That's the thing. They've got to compromise. They need to talk to each other. They need to stop holding it up. They need to stop doing all of the things that they're doing. Because the only way we're ever getting anything done is if we talk to each other, we are reasonable, and we pay attention to what's going on. And that's the thing. So we should be standing up and say, hey, we want increase in minimum wage. We want this. We want that. We want this. And why aren't you guys doing anything about it? Because you guys suck. That's why. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, who's next?
Well, to talk about the origins of the Tea Party, I'm still kind of confused because they say it's TEA, taxed enough already. We've had record low taxes, so that can't possibly be it, right? But then Then it's then they say, well, it's Rick Santelli on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, outraged at the mortgage-backed securities and government spending. Well, mortgage-backed securities, that was probably an absence or a lag or a weakened government as to what it was before that. You know, government gets weaker, this is the type of thing you get. You know, you've got government spending, okay, they're outraged at that. Where was their outrage during the Bush administration? Where was their outrage during the Reagan administration? Where was their outrage throughout the course of the Cold War? It's funny how it shows up only during Democratic administrations, isn't it? Okay, that's a little funny. So it couldn't be that, right? Okay. If they really are opposed to Republicans, if that really is authoritarianism, why does every single one of them have an R in front of their name? Why does every single one of them run on the Republican ticket? They don't run independently. They don't run on the Democratic ticket. This is not a nonpartisan thing. It's clearly partisan. What world are you living in? I mean, absolutely. What it really is it's just another invention of the John Birch Society, the conservatism, the populist conservatism that has a way of rearing its ugly head every single time there's a Democratic administration. What it really is, and I think this is true, despite what it purports to be, is it's just an effort to distance conservatives, the conservatives, I guess, that were wise enough to see that the Bush administration was severely unpopular and flawed, to distance itself from that. And that's what's happened. You've had that throughout since 2009 on. You've had these Tea Party people distancing themselves from Bush just like they are from Obama, to say, look, we're not like either one of them. We're different. Give us a chance. When they get in office, we see what they do. It's pretty bad, okay? And as Shelley said, every time I hear so often, no Republicans voted for the Affordable Care Act. None did. Arlen Specter did. He's a Republican. He may have had to change his party affiliation, but he was forced out. He didn't choose to go out. That's a Republican vote. It was sort of bipartisan. There were 160 amendments to the law before it passed. Many of them, as Shelley said, compromised to Republicans. Did they vote for it? No. That doesn't mean they didn't have an influence over it. Just like they do on these judicial nominations. These senators pick up John McCain from Arizona, and what typically happens with federal judges is the senator recommends to the president who they would like to fill in those positions in their district. That's what happened. John McCain did. Did he vote for it or against it? He voted against it. I mean, there's a wall of obstruction during Obama's administration. This is what I meant by the question I said earlier. What do you expect? I mean, he's provided a right-wing health care plan. What happens if this Affordable Care Act fails? What happens after that? We go back to the status quo ante. That's unacceptable. Jim, you said 70% of the people were happy with their health care plan. No, nobody's happy with their health care plan. You're paying every single year. Your premiums go up and up and up and up. Your benefits go down and down and down and down every single year. This year is the first time that my premium stayed the same. Yes. My premium stayed the same this year as it was last year. That's never happened before. I mean, I think that's a good thing, but I really don't think people are happy with it. And so if it fails, what happens? What is the proposition? Yes. What do Republicans have?
They have no other option.
No, a little more time. You got time? Come on up here. We got to be out of here pretty soon, but go ahead.
I'm not going to take 5 minutes. Okay, I've listened very attentively to what the speaker said, and I really respect a great deal of what he said because it was balanced. He wasn't just talking about the Tea Party, he talked about the Democrats also. And I guess what I became somewhat disappointed in is we talk about we need to think. We don't need to believe everything we hear. And I think it applies to us here tonight also, because some things have been said here tonight that are definitely not true. If we had no government, we'd be in real tough shape. I know government. I spent 29 years working in government. I wasn't a big time fellow, but I was the one who made most of the recommendations, and my superiors got the credit for it. But it was good living, so I didn't have much to cry about. But I don't think government. I think the polarization that exists causes government to do certain things. And someone said, well, if President Obama had dealt with the infrastructure rather than the Affordable Health Care Act, then they wouldn't have had an issue. But anything he come up with, they will find an issue. They will find the issue, doesn't matter what. And most of the legislation he's proposed was off the shelf from Republicans, and they oppose that. So we need to look, we do have a remedy as citizens. If we as citizens can agree what ought to be done, then we'd elect the right people, and they would do what was right. But we are all over the spectrum also. And we need to, I'm not saying we all need to agree on everything, but there are certain critical issues that we need to agree on to help this government and this nation with all the challenges which we are facing. And I could go on a number of things that I know was not true, but we need to think in here about what we hear, what we see, and everything else. I'm going to tell a joke. I don't normally do this, but it was a wife caught her husband in infidelity, and she was giving him a hard time. And so he finally, she quieted down a little bit. He said, well, honey, what you gonna believe? What I tell you are those lying eyes of yours. So
Okay, who's next? Any more next? We're running out of time. I guess I'm the last man standing. Well, I forego as usual. No. Yeah, we'll let him finish up. Anyway, I guess I'm going to have to forego. I can't say what I want to say. But anyway, it's all right. Everybody is in agreement that I should shut up. You all heard it before. So anyway, I'm not going to say it again. Yeah, do a good job of not saying it again, yes. Anyway, we've got to give our speaker some time to I want to congratulate our speaker for doing a great job. I got to do that. And I'm not going to talk about anything. I'm going to let our speaker come up here and finish up and answer what he wants to answer.
Tom, that was your shortest speech ever.
Yeah, I know.
Well, this will be short too. There was so much to cover, so I think I want to talk about what we should do. I think number one, you need to talk to people. Sweet Mary, my significant other, and she belongs to this coffee clutch group that gets together, twice a day, 7 days a week. But they're a sorority, but they solve the world's problems, okay? And in the process, and really that's, I didn't know I was going to praise you tonight, but anyways, I am. The deal is it's a very mixed group, and they're bringing more people into their orbit, right? And, they open up the newspaper, right? And they talk to one another, and sometimes they don't like what they hear. That's good. It's good. I mean, now you can say that it's going to harden attitudes and it won't do any good, but I refuse to believe that. I think if you talk to people, especially like one of our neighbors who now is in danger of losing food stamps, okay, then they tend to listen more closely and take what you have to say more seriously. Okay, now as far as the right wing is concerned, John's right. We're spending, for every dollar we spend, we borrow 40 cents, and that's unsustainable, and it's very dangerous, and we got to fix it. We don't have time for this bullshit. We really don't. So what I would like to see happen is, A, we need an industrial policy so we can figure out how we're going to compete in world markets and nurture industries and create good jobs. And in order to do that, both Republicans and Democrats have to put their labels aside, and what they have to do is say, okay, if the taxes really are down from 65% to 34%, maybe we can pay a little more in taxes. And the Democrats, on their part, can say, you know, maybe we do need to start cutting in areas where people are abusing the system, okay, and forget about the votes. All right? And then, if we're successful in doing that, okay, then we can persuade the Republicans to stop playing the fear game, because I do believe that the coalition that the Republicans have built, that goes back to the Goldwater days. It goes back to the one solid South, which is now solidly red. It used to be Democrat, right? Those people, not only in the South, but in other areas, who are by and large are white, middle class, they see that things are happening in their country that they don't like. So they're angry and they're fearful. Hence we will support Christian evangelicals, and it will make it more and more difficult for women to get abortions, because that's a vital part of this coalition that we've built, right? We will continue to play the race card with code, because that's part of the coalition that we built. Not just Southerners, people all over the United States who still are not post-racial in their outlook. But the thing that, and then what you hear these days is, oh, we need to support the Constitution. That sounds good, right? Whose interpretation? Well, the founders interpret. The founders are not here. They're there, 2 centuries away. The point is, I understand that human nature doesn't change, but I do understand that the world changes. And what you have to do, and this will betray me as not a strict constructionist, you interpret the Constitution in common sense ways that make sense, that does what? Promote the general welfare. That's in the Constitution. That's what you do. But this business of, oh, well, the founders didn't intend, something about, what the hell did they know about talk radio? Nothing. I mean, so we're stuck with taking a 2-century plus old document, reinterpreting it, okay, while maintaining its spirit, okay, in ways that do what? Promote the general welfare. I would like to see an industrial policy. I would like to see the Republicans and Democrats put their sacred cows, get them off of the table, and I would like to see them put together a cooperative plan that launches partnerships between the federal government and educational institutions to nurture industries and to develop job training programs and to put people back to work, okay, and get them ready for the competition that's already out there, and while we're doing it, rebuild the infrastructure. All of which are vital, all of which are essential, all of which will promote the general welfare. I'm sick and tired of this partisan warring where the only objective is to win power and to promote certain individuals so they get their shot at being president. That's what I'm sick of, and that's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you very much.
Well, we're done for tonight. We're going to retire. We'll be down at Starbucks, and I hope our speaker comes down there, and you'll get a chance to drill him some more, whatever, and we'll be there. How does that sound? Does that sound good? All right. Thanks for coming. It was a great, I hope you all enjoyed yourself.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College of Complex class.